Welcome to True Tales from the Other Side. If you have a true encounter with the unexplained that you want to share, contact us through the email address below. Enjoy.
I had one of those days where I felt like I was walking around in a dream. Everything seemed just a touch off, though I couldn't quite put my finger on why. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I'd been browsing the used bookstore on the corner of 3rd and Maple. It was a little hole in the wall spot I love mostly for the smell of old paper and the way the shelves were stacked so haphazardly that you could get lost in them. After an hour of browsing, I noticed something strange. The store, normally quiet, was absolutely silent. I couldn't hear any traffic outside, no faint sound of the city, even the buzzing of the old lights seemed muted. That's when I felt it, a prickling sensation, like static electricity in the air. I shook it off and tried to focus. There was a book I'd wanted to find on folk remedies, something my mom used to have. I reached out to grab it, but as my fingers brushed the spine, the lights dimmed slightly, flickering. Then, for just a split second, it was like everything around me shifted. The air felt heavier, filled with a damp, cool scent like earth and stone, and I swore I heard voices. When I blinked and looked around, the store had changed. It was still the same general layout, but the shelves were filled with different books, and everything had an older feel to it. Dust coated the floors, and there was a wooden sign above the counter that I'd never seen before, painted with Roger's Rare Finds in faded letters. The counter itself was different too, polished wood that looked antique. The strangest part was that I knew, somehow, that I'd slipped somewhere else, and that if I walked out of the store, I might not find the bustling street I'd left behind, but some other version of the world, maybe an older version. It felt like time had skipped a beat, and I was suddenly out of sync with everything I knew. To test it, I walked toward the door. Just outside the window, the scene was drastically different. The cars were vintage, straight out of the 1950s, and people were dressed in hats and gloves, wearing styles I'd only seen in black and white photos. A wave of disbelief washed over me. I wasn't just imagining things, this was real. As I took it all in, I felt the need to leave some proof. I didn't know if anyone else would ever find it, but I wanted to make sure I'd leave a trace. I reached into my bag, pulled out a newspaper clipping I'd kept, a recent article about a new space telescope, and tucked it between two shelves. I slipped it deep into the corner, hidden behind a dusty old copy of Leaves of Grass. A thought struck me as I pushed it further back. Would it still be there when I returned? If I returned, would someone stumble upon it someday, a strange article from the future, baffling whoever found it? I stood there taking in the strange silence for one last moment, then turned back toward the book I'd reached for originally, the one that had seemed to call me here. I took a deep breath and touched it again, feeling the crackling energy rise around me. Just as quickly as it had come, the feeling vanished. The lights brightened again, the humming of the city filtered back in, and I was back in the familiar bookstore I'd always known. The shelves were as they'd been, disorganized and cozy, and the counter was just as dingy as before. For a long minute, I just stood there staring at the spot where I'd tucked the clipping, trying to catch my breath. Part of me wanted to reach in, grab it, and prove it was still there. But something inside me told me not to. Maybe it was better to let it lie in the past, a strange reminder for another time. When I left the store, everything felt a bit surreal. The people on the street, the rumble of cars, all of it seemed sharper, more real, like I'd been in a fog and only now was seeing clearly. I walked home slowly, wondering if I'd ever feel that strange shift again, and if somewhere in that timeline I'd brushed against, someone would one day pull out a crumbling newspaper article and wonder at the future it described.
Thanks for listening. Remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next set of tales from the other side. Submit your story to the email below. And remember, nothing is what it seems.